Hello and welcome. For those of you who do not know me, my name is Dr. Michael Nadorff. I am the Director of Clinical Training here at Mississippi State University. This is the first of our series on Internship Prep. So for many of you, you're going to be MSU students, so obviously you're going to be well familiar with me. For those of you who aren't, welcome. You're absolutely welcome to look at this video, and hopefully a lot of it applies with your university. If you would, please just in the comments for the YouTube video, comment on what university you're at. It'd be really good to see who all actually watches this and how helpful it is. So also, as you have comments throughout, please feel free to put them down there. I must admit I don't check it as often as I should, but whenever I do have a chance to check it, I'm happy to answer any questions you have. If you want quicker answers, and especially for MSU students, please just shoot me an email, and I'll get back to you as quick as I can on it. So today we're going to talk about kind of the overall view of what you should be doing to prepare for internship in the early stages. So this is, it's July 20th here for me recording this. So around this time in the summer is a really good time to start being working on your application and thinking about this process. So I wanted to get you guys started on the basics, thinking about the things you need to be aware of, and just working through the process. So first, I wanted to briefly give you an introduction to the match and what this process looks like. I know for most of you've seen it somewhat from senior people in your lab, but you probably haven't thought about it all from start to finish. So this process starts early. Again, it starts about now, and it's going to continue all the way through match day in February. And with it, your fall should be much busier than you think it's going to be. So with internship prep, think of this basically like at least another class, like one of your really intense classes. That's what this is going to be like. Um, so you need to set aside enough time in order to be able to accommodate that. There are also a lot of deadlines that hit around the same time. So for our program, you have to have your comps done and your dissertation proposed by October 1st. So doing all this internship prep work and that at the same time is going to be a lot. So first and foremost, one of the most important things you can do is you really need to knock out the comps and the dissertation proposal as soon as you can. That's where people get stuck, and that's where people end up staying an extra year. So you need to get those done just so from October 1st until November 1st, it's all internship prep all the time. We'll be doing a fair amount of the work ahead of time too, but it really, most of your work, obviously, for those milestones is going to be before October 1st. And then again, after October 1st, we really kick it into high gear with internship prep. So that's the first steps. November 1st is usually the earliest deadlines for most of these programs. But what you'll want to do is you'll want to list up for all your programs what programs you're looking at, what are their deadlines, what materials they require, all of that to make sure you have all that prepped well in advance. Now, we'll talk about this a little bit more as we go along, but for the MSU students, we have a shared folder that you have with examples of this. And I'll be showing you some of those files as we go through. So don't worry about that too much yet. I'll show you as we go. But just be aware that there is that shared folder. If you don't have access to it yet, shoot me an email and I'll send you an invite so you can get access to the shared folder. So that's going to lay out when your due dates are. Ideally, you want to get the applications in a couple days before. Through no fault of their own, the APPIC website likes to crash on November 1st. And the reason why is because that's when everyone's putting in their apps. That it's an insane amount of traffic on that site. So ideally, you really want to have those things in early to make sure that you're set with that. Once the applications are in, Then there's a bit of a waiting game. We'll talk about what to do during that waiting game. There are actually steps to do. Um, you do your interviews. After your interviews, you submit your rank list, as do the sites, and the computer matches them up about a couple weeks later, 2, 3 weeks later. So that's kind of the process in a nutshell. And again, we're going to go far more into the specifics and all these things, but just to give you a sense. So one of the things I wanted to do today is orient you to the APPIC website. So hopefully over here you can see the APPIC website. There are a couple of things that are going to be more than really important for you to be able to see and to do. So the first thing is, how do you find programs? So within here, you'll see there's all the match information, APPIC information. But here's the directory. So we're going to go over here to directory online. And here you can search by, you can limit it just to internships. If you know the name of the program, you can search for that. You can search in a lot of different ways. There are actually ways, if you expand this out, to do it by geographic area. So if you know the metro area you want to be in, we'll talk about the importance of not limiting yourself by geography a little later. But as you can see, there are a lot of things you can, limit it. But let's, because I'm a homer, let's go with where I went. So Baylor College of Medicine. So Baylor's a funny internship because there are two. Pediatrics has its own internship. I was not in that. So this is Baylor College of Medicine, and so a couple things that are important here. So first, each internship is going to have their own website, and for the ones that you apply to, it's going to be really important that you go to the website and you get the latest information, from that website. Make sure that you know what's required for it, all that good stuff. All that should be consistent with what's in the APPIC site. Should, yeah, verify. Just go to the website. So here, of course, you want to make sure your site's accredited. For our program, we require you only to apply to accredited sites. If you wanted to apply to an unaccredited, you need to run it past CTC. So just FYI. Start date. Start date is super important. We're going to talk about this more as time goes on. But start date's super important. And the reason why is because it starts affecting graduation deadlines. So here, we've been going back and forth with the grad school, but it looks like August 10th is kind of a firm deadline for us, where in order to graduate in August, you have to be done with everything by August 10th. So why is that important? Well, if you don't hit that deadline, you're not graduating until December. And that means your postdoctoral hours aren't going to start accruing until December. So you're going to have this 6-month period where maybe you're on a postdoc, but you can't count those hours towards licensure, or maybe it's an issue for the postdoc because you can't start applying for licensure. It gets tricky. There are ways around it. We have students that have done it. We can talk about it, but you need to really be aware of deadlines that are after, or start dates that are after August 10th. So we'll talk about that more. And again, if you're considering one of those sites strongly, we should talk about it individually. So number of slots expected in the next class. This is important because typically what will happen is people will just look down here and say, well, I guess you can get the information here, but they'll look at the number of people that applied to a site and kind of judge the selectivity of a site based on that. That's not the right way to do it. This only tells you part of the story. So with 6 slots expected, if there were only 3 internship positions, then this site is twice as selective as it really is. So you need to look at how many applications are there per slot. So they're expecting sits. You divide this by 138 by sits, and that tells you it's essentially how many applications they're getting per position. So use that when you're looking at how selective a site is. Don't go just purely off the number of applicants. So in here, there'll be details about what the rotations are, if they're different tracks, that sort of information. Again, you have to spend time really looking through all this to figure out which sites match what you're looking for. It takes a lot of time, but with your professional organizations, a lot of them are going to have lists of sites that have training in edits. So with that, it's worth looking to see if they already have that. That can be a really great place to start. Another advantage is your program might have some of those things, or talk to the people that are, graduate from your lab. Where did they apply? That will give you a nice way to, some hints on what are some places you should be looking at. What are some places that have interviewed MSU students in the past? That's good to know. So this is saying, for most part, this is pretty consistent. You need to have your comms fest dissertation approved by start of internship. Obviously, we require you to have that before then, so no issue there. You want to make sure that you meet the qualifications for a site. So some sites will only take clinical, some people will only take counseling. So just make sure you hit what it is the site is looking for. This has actually changed. Baylor actually used to not accept counseling. So, yeah. So those do change. Again, this is how many positions are in each track. So that's, again, something to kind of keep in mind, too. Like this geropsychology research track is now 3 positions. When I was there, this was only 1. There are not that many gero people in the world. They're not going to get the majority of their applications for this track. If you're interested in gero, this is going to be a really good place to apply. And I'm not just saying that because I went here, but I went here. It's a really good gero place. So pay attention to these things. What types of populations do they have? If you want child experience, do they have it? This is what's going to tell you. Treatment modalities, different experiences. Don't come here if you want sports psychology, but if you want, rehab psych, yeah, they have something. Then you have your number of applications completed, number invited for interviews, number of interns. Interesting that it's been 4 these recent years and they expect sets. Will they really take sets? Hard to say. Just factor it in. The breakdown between PhD PsyD is kind of, if they only take PsyDs, then PhD may not be as good of a fit. This is also something that's changed in recent years. They almost never used to take PsyDs, so that's interesting. Also, what are people doing after internship? So, honestly, well, it's interesting that these don't add up to 4, but you don't really want people working on their dissertation. That's not the greatest sign. You want people either in strong postdoctoral fellows or people in faculty jobs, or if it's a VA, you'd expect them to go into a VA medical center. Something that funky with these data, though. So take these with a grain of salt. So that's kind of how you go through and look at these different profiles. The other thing I wanted to show you on the APPIC website is the APPIC. Now, you should look at the APPIC now. Like, this is the time. This is the time to sign up for APPIC. Not to register for the match. We're going to talk more about this. APPIC, not match. So, with the APPIC, let's see. Here we go. Oops. The APPIC might not be up yet. Let me see if I can find another way into it. It opens around the 15th of June each year. Oh, there it is. Okay. So you go to the APPIC, go ahead and create your account, and that's generally you get in and see the APPIC. I want you to do that because it's going to tell you all the things you're going to need, all the info you need. It's good to be aware of that now so you can start consolidating the things that that you haven't done. If you haven't been tracking your clinical hours quite as precisely as you should be, this is a good time to go back and start fixing that and looking at your notes and trying to make sure that everything's up to date so you can put the stuff in. So for MSU, well, I'm jumping ahead. So anyway, so start looking at the APPIC and figure out what it is that you need. Very important. Do not register for the match until the program tells you to do so. I repeat, do not register for the match until the program tells you to do so. The reason why is because once you register for the match, you're considered in the match. And if you don't apply for whatever reason, then you count as not matching against the program. So it's very important that you don't do that until the program has voted you ready for internship. So one way that will help you with registering for the APPIC, that should not cost you any money. So registering for the match and getting your match number is going to cost you a little bit of money. So if it's asking for a credit card, email me. If you haven't already been approved to apply for internship, don't do it. Email me and make sure it's okay, because it's a big deal and we cannot undo it. Another thing, just briefly, I know this is jumping back, but I misread my notes here. With applying for sites, geography. So people tell you not to be geographically limited. This is really good, a really good recommendation. Sometimes you can, if there are enough sites in an area that you can get away with it. If you have enough good matches in the area, you can get away with it. In general, you should be applying nationwide. Now, we're blessed being in the Southeast because actually, as far as selectivity, the lowest selectivity is in the Southeast. So we're actually helped a little bit by geography. Big cities. Metro areas and big cities are kind of a curse because everyone wants to be there. So if you want to be in Los Angeles or Chicago or New York, everyone else does too. And you're going to see those on the number of applications. Factor that in. I wouldn't want to see someone applying only to Chicago sites. I think that would be doing a huge disadvantage to you. Now, let's say you really want to be in Chicago. Let's say a good 7 sites are in Chicago out of your 15, and maybe the rest are elsewhere. Fine, I can live with that. But don't put all your eggs in one basket, especially with cities, because they are much more selective. So, picking letter writers. So you're going to need letters from 3 recommenders, and DCT is going to write a letter for everybody. So a couple things that have come up in the past. Non-psychologists. So let's say you have a prac supervisor who's not a psychologist, but that knows you well, saw you work on some difficult cases, that sort of thing. That's totally fine. You don't want all your letters coming from non-psychologists. 1 is fine, 2 maybe. 1 is certainly fine. 2 is probably okay. But you want a couple good psychologist letters too in there. Non-clinical psychologists. So in our program, several of you are mentored by someone who's not a clinical psychologist. Can they write a letter? Yes, and they should. It's always good for your advisor to be one of your letters, even if they haven't supervised you clinically, because they're going to be able to talk about, kind of what you aspire to career-wise, what you're doing research-wise, your progress in your dissertation, which is a big deal, people always underestimate the importance of how far they are in their dissertation. Every site will ask you about it. It is a big deal. So be aware of that. But asking your advisor to write a letter, even if they're not a clinical psychologist, is totally fine. Letter from me. So for the most part, you will not ask me for a letter. Now, if you're one of my students, then you probably will. Now, why would you not ask me for a letter, especially if I supervise you? I certainly can write you a letter, and I'm happy to if you'd like me to. But a lot of that information is already going to be in the DCT letter. So my individual letter really doesn't add anything to that. You already have one letter from me. So that's why most students don't choose to have me write a second letter. But it made sense for me to write one if I am your research mentor, because then I can basically do the same letter that the other research mentors do, and then separate that from my DCT letter. So you don't need to get a letter from me. Most people don't. That's separate from the DCT letter, because I'm going to write a letter for all of you anyway. Now, something that I know I have in my notes later, so it'll probably come up again, but it's very important. If there's anything in your past that is an issue that might come up on a background check, I need to know now. If you have a DUI or something, I need to know now. We need to talk about it now, because I need to talk about that in your DCT letter. If that stuff comes up, or if you put that on the APPIC and I don't explain it, you're not matching. So, we've had people that have had issues in the past, where I've been able to explain it and it has been fine. We can work through this, but I need to know so I can advocate for you. So if there's something there, if you're not sure if it's something, you need to come and talk to me, and we'll figure that out. Some supplemental materials to start thinking about. So a lot of sites are going to ask for supplemental materials, and you'll see that as you're going through their profiles. So you're probably going to need at least a couple of really good comprehensive assessments. So what you'll have to do is you'll have to de-identify those. It takes a while to do, and it needs to be approved by your supervisor, and then I also approve the de-identification. This takes a while. This is not going to be done the day before applications are due. So start thinking about, are there really good assessments that you've done that highlight your ability to think about complex cases and to work through them, that you may want to send with your applications. Likewise, treatment summaries, treatment plans, and case conceptualizations. There are sites that are going to ask for these to show your ability to think through clinical cases, clinical topics, to look at your clinical orientation to see how that matches up with what you said in your essay. So keep all those in mind. Think about, are there cases that really highlight my ability as a clinician, especially in the things that are more advanced skills. So that's, coming up with a case conceptualization, figuring out a treatment plan directly based on that case conceptualization, those sorts of things, cases that highlight that. And once you have those identified, you may want to start working on those materials, because your sites are going to want these. And again, you'll see it as we go through with finding your sites and looking at what materials they have. So we talked a little bit about timeline already, but I'll go ahead and remind you again. This is going to be like a class of not two. Do not underestimate how long internship prep takes. Do not procrastinate on this stuff. It will bite you in the behind if you do. So again, going over deadlines. Comps defended, dissertation proposed by October 1st. October 15th, I need all of your clinical hours in the APPIC website. Now with this, I'm okay with you estimating how many hours you'll have up until November 1 with that October 15th submission. We're not going to be cutting off those last 2 weeks, but I need them in there to have enough time to review them. And then also, if I need something corrected, to be able to send it back to you, have you fix it, and then have it back, because I have to sign off on all of your hours. So I need those by October 15th. November 1 is usually the deadline, the earliest deadlines for internships. So, a couple pieces of homework for you. So, homework number 1. I need you to go to the APPIC website. Again, it's I think it's appic.org, but of course this one's different. Let me click back. Yeah, appic.org. And orient yourself to the program directory. Start looking at programs. In a second here, I'll try to pull up my old spreadsheet to kind of show you how I put it in a spreadsheet form. And again, that's going to be in the shared folder, but now's the time to start that. Work on your clinical hours. Remember, October 15th is the date I need them in, and they need to be approved. Let's see, if the APPI is open at the time that you see this video, and I believe it is right now for 2018, go ahead and create an account, look through it, make sure you have what you need. Start thinking about who you want your letter writers to be and ask them early in the process. You want to get them your materials at least a month before your letters due. So what materials are these? Your CV, what sites are you applying to and why? Reminding them of any key events or things that you want them to mention in your letter. Those are the main things. For some of your recommenders, especially those in external sites or those that are not clinical psychologists, they may feel a little uncomfortable writing this letter. They may not know what's expected. With that, I'm more than happy to review any of the letters. I don't have to. But if they would like me to lay eyes on it, they are welcome to send them to me, and I'll shoot them right back with some feedback as needed. So just make sure they're aware of that. But they need those at least a month ahead of time. So, just think in your head, that's October 1st. You have a lot going on during that time. Earlier you start, the better with this. Again, MSU students, by the time you see this video, if I have not shared the internship prep folder with you, please ask me about it and I'll give you access. Speak with your advisor. Ask them where they went to internship if you don't know. You should know that hopefully by now, but if you don't, this should be a good time to ask them and get advice from them. Also, talk to the graduates from your lab. Get their materials and see what advice they have. Those are all really good things to be doing at this point. So hopefully that's a good orientation to the first steps. In the coming videos, you'll see we'll go through all of the essays. We'll go through how to do the CV and all the steps of the process. But in these summer months, this is what you should be working on. So I hope that gives you a sense of it. If you have any questions, shoot me an email or just stop me in the hall. And hopefully we'll get you where you need to be. So yeah, good luck, and let me know how I can be helpful.